Today we're going to look at some interesting varieties of tomatoes that you just may want to include in your upcoming garden. Hi, I'm Jeremy, and today we're continuing in our Gardening with Carl series as he shares with us some of his favorite tomato varieties that he likes to include in his garden. I've also asked if he would just give us a glimpse at the structure he's erected in his basement to ensure the optimal growing environment for his young tomato plants. So join me now as we listen to Carl.
I'm really happy to welcome you to my little enclave where I like to grow my tomatoes and my new plants. But I want to share with you a little bit of why I built this down here. This is a kind of a closet, a very small room, but it has a tendency to be cold because the wall is an outside wall. It's a concrete wall. There's no insulation, and so I've insulated this so that I could maintain the appropriate temperature for these plants to grow well. And so it's going to, I think, be suitable. I'll be putting a curtain here to try and keep the heat up to par, and we'll have a small oil heater here to just keep it at about 75 to 80 degrees. But it's going to be, I think, very suitable for what my requirements are. I'm eager to show you the tomato plants that I've chosen to grow this year. Each one is very unique. There's not very many that are even near alike. But I want to explain to you each one because you might be interested in trying some of these yourself. This here is a Japanese truffle. It's unique in the sense that it has this wonderful, rich, deep taste, and we love to use it in salads because it's not a big tomato, it's kind of a plum-shaped tomato. And what I want you to notice is the leaf. This is not a tomato leaf, a usual tomato leaf. But tomatoes, plants, have two types of leaves. A few of them have what they call potato leaf. Most all of them have tomato leaves. But what is interesting and what is common among people who know tomatoes is that a potato leaf tomato, generally speaking, has very good taste. You will hear that among people who are experts on tomatoes, which I'm not, but I've heard that. But this is an excellent little tomato. And then we have a tomato that has a very interesting name. It's called Kellogg's Breakfast. I have no idea why it's called that. It'd be interesting to find out. But it's a large yellow tomato shaped like a beefsteak tomato. And it's very delicious. It has a very mellow, light taste, and yet it's fun to grow because it's unique being yellow. I have a black plum tomato, which is from Russia, and it has that dark, very subtle taste, and it's a plum-shaped tomato. And I like to grow it because I like to save the seed because I have friends who like to have the seed. And so I grew it for that reason. My favorite tomato is Cherokee Purple. Cherokee Purple is a very well-known tomato. It was named by a man who actually lives in Raleigh, North Carolina. He's not an Indian. He doesn't come from Cherokee, but the tomato comes from Cherokee. And he happened to run across the tomato. It didn't have a name. Some of the Cherokee Indians were growing it. And he loved this tomato. This man was he's a microbiologist that teaches somewhere in the Silicon Triangle there near Raleigh. But he named this tomato Cherokee Purple because it is dark and it has that very delicious taste. I love it. It makes a great sandwich. This here is a Tami Grape. It's a little grape that hangs, and it's a very tall tomato, large tomato plant, and it just produces hundreds of these little tiny grape-shaped tomatoes. it's irresistible to go into my garden and resist, eating some of these while I'm out there. It's like candy. This one here is said to be probably the finest hybrid tomato that's been developed. You have a lot of hybrid tomatoes that make that claim, but this one is, by many well-known tomato experts will tell you that this tomato all around is the best performer, plus it tastes like a heirloom tomato. It's called Big Beef. And I was very fortunate to meet a lady who had taken the Big Beef. She loved that tomato, but she wanted to have an open pollinated variety so that she could save the seed. And she sent me the seed, and I'm happy about that. And if this tomato favors that tomato, then I probably will just grow this one because I like to save the seed. This tomato here is a chocolate cherry, a dark cherry-shaped tomato. And this one is called Green Zebra. It's one of my son's favorite tomatoes. He says it has a very rich, tangy taste, and he wanted me to try it, so I'm trying it for his sake. Now, Big Zack is currently the tomato that's taking all of the prizes for the biggest tomato grown. The lady that perfected this or developed this tomato, her last name starts with Z, and so she calls it the Big Zack. Her name is Zacharias, I think. And these tomatoes will grow up to 5 pounds. They're huge, they're very big. The only problem is I grew one of these a year or two ago, and I only got 2 tomatoes on my plant. And they weren't 5 pounds, they were more like 2 pounds. Okay. Let's see here. We have this is another Russian tomato, black Creme. Comes from the peninsula that goes in the Black Sea, and it's a delicious tomato. It's very similar to the Cherokee Purple. And then the tomato, it doesn't seem to live up to its name, but in terms of size, but this is the tomato that holds the record for size. Many years ago, a man from who lives in Oklahoma grew one of these over 6 pounds. It's just unbelievable, and no one has been able to match that, even with tomatoes that normally are bigger than this one is normally. But I've grown these before, and they do get very big. They'll get 2 and 3 pounds. And they're very tasty. They're a good tomato, so I like to grow it. So those are the tomatoes that I've chosen to grow this year, and hope sometime you can come over and visit us and have a nice tomato sandwich.
So did you discover some tomato varieties that you think you might like to include in your garden this year? I hope so. I've included several links in the description below to some of the varieties that he referenced. Also, if you enjoyed today's presentation, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Next week, Carl's going to show us how he prepares the soil out in his garden in anticipation of the warmer days to come. So please, join us next week as together we explore greener pastures.